What's happening?
Hey, how we doing?
Not bad. Happy. It's kind of weird to say doing a show on a Tuesday, but I guess it's happy, not Monday, I guess.
Yeah, happy Tuesday. How are things up there in Minnesota?
It's good, man. It's good. It's good, good weather. No humidity. It's probably the only time of the year that Minnesota has better weather than all the southern states.
Nice. I'm gonna have to make a trip up there sometime. I don't know what I would do, but we'll get
Got the
to
biggest
it.
mall in 10,000 lakes.
Oh, 10,000 lakes?
Yeah, that's what we're known for.
That's actually crazy. I didn't know that. It's a lot of
Yeah,
lakes.
no, there's tons of lakes. Like people will go walking around the lakes. That's like a big thing. Fishing, hunting.
It's not
Yeah,
too much different from Alabama. There's a lot of fishing and hunting down here.
yeah. We just have bigger cities. Minneapolis is probably what the size of Alabama's like three largest cities together. I'd imagine.
I don't know. I would have to give it a Google. No idea. Birmingham's not that small though. There's a lot going on over here.
Sure. Well, shout out to our sponsors before we get started. Black Box and HD are pretty obvious if you're looking to be an agent. I'd love to talk to you. If you're in Birmingham, you're looking to work for Will. He's always hiring. Sales dash.
Till October. We don't have any room. We're out of space. But
Okay, sorry, he's not always hiring. But, sales dash CRM. You guys, I really mean this when I say this, but this company is growing really fast. And I'm constantly seeing Josh at different brokerages, hearing a lot of things about them. They're a freight specific CRM, really the only one that I know that's actually freight specific and designed by an actual someone who's done the job. With sales, being so important these days, I mean, definitely give Josh a shout. Tell him we sent you. And then Trio, obviously they do a lot of our back end, our marketing. A lot that goes kind of behind the scenes that they help with. And yeah, did I miss anything, Will?
No, we'll have to get Josh on the podcast. He'd be a good guest. We need to line that up sometime in the near future.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've done some content with him before. He's got a lot of knowledge. and he's really way more articulate than I am on how he explains it. Um, but yeah, man, it's kind of fun to do our first. I guess we weren't really planning to do it this way, but with your travel plans, kind of us wanting to do at least one show a week, you kind of just walked into doing our own show today.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. Hopefully, we get some interaction from the audience with some questions or comments, some topics that they'd like us to dive into.
I still can't figure this out. Like Will and I are still learning, but like we're streaming to our event page, but we're not streaming to our personal pages, which obviously we'd like to do it all because then it like has the chat be separate. I don't know. Technology is difficult, man. I don't know how you do it.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even realize that this was okay. Yeah, we can only do one LinkedIn destination, so it's just the page. So we weren't able to stream to the Two Dogs page for 30 days or so until our account met the criteria. So this is the first episode that isn't streamed to our personal pages. I didn't realize that until just now, actually.
Oh wow. I wonder if that's. I think you can still add it to your personal, right? Because it's allowing me to add it to my personal.
No, I can only do one LinkedIn destination.
Oh, well then maybe I should stream it. Hold on.
Yeah, you should be able to link it to yours, but just from the control panel, I'm only able to link one.
All right, I just went live. I mean, it's probably gonna be two separate chats, but might as well because obviously we're still growing. We appreciate it, by the way, guys. I think we have close to 600 followers in a month or 550. So yeah, we appreciate it. But let's dive in, man. I know we had one question before on our event page. It's like a 3-pronged question. Do you have that somewhere?
I can get it pulled up. I know that the first part of that question was how do I stand out as a new broker, and then there were 2 follow-ups. But we can dive into that one while I get the rest pulled up.
I mean, how was it for you when you were a new broker? I mean, did they give you much training on what to do, or did you just pick up the phone and start calling? I mean, how was your experience as a new broker years and years ago?
It's actually kind of funny. So the guy that trained me is actually my current business partner. So I founded Black Box with him and another guy. I got little to no training. So I actually went into the company for the interview thinking that it was some kind of finance position. I just heard broker, and I don't know, for whatever reason, that's where my head went. I walked in, they started talking about trucks, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. But no, first day I walked in, they set me up with 2 computers, or 2 monitors, 1 computer rather, and gave me a training manual. And my current partner at the time, he was I guess he was in a manager role, right? So he was in charge of training me, and he kind of just like gave me this binder. I read through it, and he was like, "Do you have any questions?" And I had lots of questions. And I started asking him. He got really busy. He just closed the binder. He said, "Welcome to the shit show. Go hit the phones." So no, I didn't really get very much training at all. But that said, like that kind of worked for me. I'm kind of one of those people that does good trial by fire or getting thrown in the deep end. So Google was my best friend. I was Googling stuff as I was figuring it out. But my second day, I got somebody on the phone, and he gave me a load. And we've talked about this before, but it was a reefer load.
Reefer load, yes.
Yeah, my one and only. I'll never do it again. So some of my guys do.
Don't say never.
I won't do it. I won't. I don't care. You could send me a great one-on-one reefer load right now. I kick it to somebody else. I don't.
Wait. Let's back up here. So you're saying if some guy on LinkedIn messaged you today, an enterprise reefer shipper, you wouldn't do it.
My company would do it. I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Yes, like I would delegate it. I'm not going to pretend to. So that goes back to kind of the question, right? It's like, how do I stand out as a new broker? Man, pick like one commodity, one type of transportation, and you're not going to know everything, right? Like it does take time to understand all the ins and outs, right? But you can get a pretty good understanding of one type of equipment, how a certain type of freight moves, and then you can target that and get some experience that way. Where a lot of people go wrong is they start jumping all over the place. So they go from reefer to flatbed, expedited, and they don't have it's too much. It's too much at once, right? But yeah, so I got that reefer load, and it was like 4 p.m. and the workday was 7:30 to 4, and pretty much everybody left except the GM, and he couldn't even build it. It was like 2 picks US, 3 drops Canada. It took us like an hour to add all the stops. It was a nightmare. I'm getting calls about POs and stuff. I have no idea what I'm doing. I had the truck at 8,000. I quoted the customer 8,100, and everybody's making fun of me. They're like, why would you only quote $8,100? It's like, dude, I'm 18 years old. It's my second day, and y'all told me to make some calls. Like, I got a load. Like, what more do you want from me? But yeah, the load didn't go great, and the customer never talked to me again. And I never moved another reefer load. So that was my reefer career in a nutshell.
That's the fun part about reefer, though. I think is
It wasn't fun. Man, it wasn't fun.
It's kind of wild and chaotic, but also I think you brought up a good point. I mean, I don't know what the market was back then, but obviously I've told you this before. My biggest customer was multi-pick, multi-drop, reefer, a lot of cross country. Those are expensive shipments. So if you're making, $500-$600 off of a $9,000 load and doing multiple of those a day adds up a lot more than making 25% off of a, I don't know, $1,400 load. Doing regional flatbed. But I guess that's relevant to flatbed, reefer, or dry van. But I kind of did it by accident. But I had a lot of long distance customers. I did a lot of Cali to Illinois dry van. I had a flatbed customer out west. So naturally, I think my average loaded miles, I looked it up. My biggest month was like 1,100, 1,200. With 150 shipments approximately. So I think you can make more money with doing longer distance. Not that I ever turned down any freight at all, but you got to do a lot more volume with some of the regional stuff.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. So for the most part, yeah, flatbed is more like one-on-one, but we do have some customers that their lanes almost mimic a reefer-esque account. Like it'll be a flatbed with 14 drops cross country, and the line haul does get into the range of 10 to 15,000. So it's kind of the same play on numbers there. But back to the original question, just some simple ways to stand out is just response time. And if you're a cradle to grave broker and you don't have like the Outlook app downloaded on your phone with notifications on, you need to do that kind of stuff.
Does anyone not have the Outlook downloaded on their phone? Is a cradle to grave broker?
Well, look, when we get people, we have to tell them to do it. I mean, it's just little things. But yeah, like being responsive after hours, especially in a cradle to grave position when you're starting out, like you do need to be a little overly attentive, right? Like you need to respond to those 6, 7, 8 p.m. emails when you're getting started out. I mean, even forever, if you're in a cradle to grave, it's the service really. A lot of people don't respond after their office hours, right? And if you're a shipper and you can't get a hold of your broker at 4:30, like you're probably going to find another broker. At least I would.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of interesting because I think when you're new, I think that's like the biggest grind. I see this debate on LinkedIn all the time, like people talking about ice baths and, working 15-hour days. And and then I hear the balance. I think the answer is really a little bit of both. Before I ever got on LinkedIn, was my biggest grind. I left for the office at 6 a.m. Sometimes didn't leave the office till 6:30. But that's kind of what it took to build a decent sized book. And then, obviously, I didn't continue working all the time, those type of hours, but for the first 6 months, I definitely did.
Yeah. Like when we started Black Box, there's no real bounce, right? I think that if you are passionate about it, it's a little bit easier to do that, right? If it were something, at least for me, if it's a position that I'm not really all in on or, bought in, I'm not gonna be willing to do that, right? But for me, like the brokerage, even when I was cradle to grave at my previous employer, it makes sense if it's, what I put in is what I'm going to get out. So if I'm being paid commission, it's much easier for me to do the extra things as opposed to if I'm salary or hourly, whether I bust my ass or I just waste oxygen, I'm getting paid the same amount. So that's one thing that's why most brokerages are structured with the commission schedule. You don't really see salaried sales reps, right?
No. What kind of hours do you guys have your guys' reps working? Are you 7 to 4, 8 to 5, 7:30 to 4:30? Obviously we just talked about it and people are working a lot later, but I'm kind of curious what your guys' set hours are.
So it varies, but our cradle to grave reps are 7:30 to 4. But then depending on different support positions, we stagger hours and have after hours and weekends. But a standard cradle to grave role will be 7:30 to 4, and we're Central Time, so works out pretty well.
That's not bad. It's interesting too. I think you see this, and I don't know if you see this around your office. But I'm kind of curious your thoughts on KPIs as we're talking about new brokers. Like I don't personally see, and the people who I know are successful are not always the ones that are at the top of the call list, which is counterintuitive to a lot of other sales jobs I had. But I mean, we get these shippers on our podcast that say it's 80% spray and pray. I think the lowest we've had a shipper tell us is 75%. I mean, I think part of that difficulty is, a lot of these companies are banging home. You got to send out X amount of emails or X amount of calls a day, but there's kind of been lost the quality over, over quantity. I mean, that's just my opinion from a lot of people I've talked to, and obviously some of my own experience.
Yeah, so we kind of have expectations as far as where we expect. Some offices split, right? So it's a split model. So I have half of my office is teams where you have an account manager. We've got inside sales doing sales for them, dispatch, track and trace, carrier sales. The other half is cradle to grave. For the cradle to graves, we kind of have an idea of, doing this for the 4 years or so, where we expect them to be at, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 18 months or so. We're not really huge on KPIs unless there's not results. So if we talk about quality over quantity, if somebody's getting the job done, if they're moving freight, and at least there's tangible progress, right? If I can go up to them like, hey, what are you working on? What have you done today? And it makes sense, then we're not going to be over the top on KPIs. Now, other people, unfortunately, it's just the human nature. Some people need to be pushed, right? They need, okay, like I need to do this in order for them to look at something and say, okay, for me to do my job today, like I need to do X, Y, Z. So if we have people that we're kind of pulling teeth to get things done, they're not really having any traction, we will establish some KPIs, but they might vary person to person, right?
But if you have like a cradle to grave rep doing, I don't know, let's just say in his first year doing 40,000. I mean, are you concerned with how many phone calls they're making on a daily basis?
Well, it depends what the time frame is for that 40,000. Are you talking monthly or?
I'm talking about doing 40,000 in gross profit. So I don't know, 300,000 in revenue a month.
Oh, no, we're not worried about it. So somebody's doing 40,000 in margin in a month. We're probably looking at transitioning them to a team role, so building around them. A big thing that we do is we don't want to cap anybody's potential. So because I brokered a high volume of freight as a cradle to grave for several years, and it's not super sustainable. There's a lot of burnout, right? So our reps get to a certain point of, and it's kind of tough to differentiate what exactly it is. It's not necessarily margin. It's a little bit of load count, so volume, margin, revenue. When they get to a certain point, we want to build around them. So all of our account managers started as cradle to graves, right? And once they built their book of business large enough to need support roles, at that point, we then slide them a carrier sales who's booking all their loads, a dispatch who's doing all the rate confirmations, building, and then a track and trace. So if they're
that hit into their commission, or that's
it varies. So it varies what type of account it is, right? And I don't want to get into what our percentages are or house accounts and all that good stuff, but it depends.
Oh, no, 100%.
I mean, if they were to land that account themselves, the percentage is larger, right? When they get moved into the team role, we have BDRs, inside sales, who just do sales. So they get us in the door. We get any pricing action. It's kicked to the account manager. The percentage is less on those. Those would be house accounts, right? But at the same time, they're free to do their own sales. And if they land their own accounts, it's a little bit higher of a percentage, right? But at the same time, they have inbound leads coming from our BDR. So it's when you talk about that balance. So we go back to a new broker, right? And getting that book of business off the ground, operating a book at, 40K GPM monthly over 2-3 years is, first of all, you're probably not going to be able to extend much past that unless you're just really, you got some like really good time trade-offs for customers. But for the most part, you're going to be maxed out. That's going to be all your time. It's going to be very stressful. But once you build the team around them, right, they're much more free, right? They're not having to take those calls at 6, 7, 8 p.m. They have after hours, weekends. They have support. So it raises the ceiling of what they're able to do. But yeah, there are some trade-offs depending on how the account's established. And also we have our support roles drawing a smaller commission as well. So they have some skin in the game as opposed to just being salaried.
I was more asking, so if some cradle to grave reps, so they don't want their percentage to drop if they just stay, cradle to grave, and they don't want the don't want the team because so you're kind of like doing a pod model, but not a pod model. So like I know a lot of companies, I shouldn't say a lot, but
more or
I
less.
know Steam Logistics has this model, for example, when you get to a certain level, probably around 40, 50K, then you give X amount of your profit to a new hire every month. And then you're still cradle to grave, but that person's there to help move your freight while grow yours, and you get a percentage, of their profit. I was curious if it was more like that model, but it sounds like you have a model more where when they get to that 40, 50 mark, then you hire carrier sales and tracking as opposed to putting another cradle to grave rep underneath them, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, we don't stack. So, I mean, what you're describing, I know some shops in town that do that. It's different. Yeah, they're not hiring and mentoring on this and drawing a percentage, and they can say no to it. It's just nobody has. And I don't think anybody ever would. I mean, they would have to have quite the setup to for it to not be appealing to them. Because again, if and when you've been brokering freight cradle to grave for an extensive period of time, it really takes a toll on you, especially if you've got some higher maintenance accounts. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it's much more appealing. It's better, at least me. Like even if I were in that position, I would take the team role. It's more sustainable.
It's so dependent too, like you said, on accounts. Like I always give John Rogers a hard time because every time we're on the phone, he's telling me about all these loads, but he has like most of his freight, other than I can say his customer's name because he says it all over LinkedIn every time he's on. But except for Brinks, a lot of his freight is very far in advance, which is great for him. But he's probably able to handle a lot more freight than, whereas like a lot of my freight was same day or day before, multi-pick, multi-drop. The amount of freight you can handle is a little bit different depending on the type of account.
Yeah, it definitely matters on the accounts, and some accounts aren't suitable for a team system. So some of the stuff that when I've heard you talk about your freight, it probably wouldn't make sense on a team model. Some of this like after hour, they're calling you and it's kind of disorganized, and you kind of have to know the contact and pivot and be so flexible. Like that kind of stuff probably wouldn't do good on a team system, right? So it is pretty like freight dependent. And yeah, if you're a John Rogers, if you've got very large it probably makes sense for, if it was John in that role, to just keep what he's doing, right? If he's maintaining that margin percentage and it's not anything too crazy. But yeah,
he has help too. I think he's got one or two people. He has some help.
Okay, yeah. I was going to ask you. It always seems like he's got a ton going on, but then he'll be like eating chicken wings on the live stream. But I know he's got freight moving, so I always wondered if it's just that smooth or if he's got a little bit of help somewhere.
He took some heat for that. Somebody posted that clip from our show with him and the drivers of him eating a chicken wing, and yeah, he took some heat from that one. But that was an interesting show. I don't know if you saw my post earlier, but we got a message from a shipper wanting to connect with Chris. There was, I think we had 100 and some comments on that live show. I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously we want to bring guests that we have sponsors that obviously want more eyes on their name, so we're trying to bring conversations that draw viewership. But aside from that, I mean, I think that those are a lot of conversations that are needing to be had, and people seem to be interested in building relationships and talking about tough topics.
Yeah, John's a great guest. I mean, he's very knowledgeable, and also he is who he is, and he believes what he believes. And it seems like a lot of times people will almost, shit, but he'll stand by whatever he says, and he has reasoning behind it. At the same time, he doesn't come off as hostile, right? So he's a great guest to have with some of these drivers to hear their perspectives. It always leads to some good conversations.
Yeah, no, I think it was really, we went, an hour and a half on both episodes.
Yeah, the first one was pushing 2 with Jamie and those guys. But yeah, both of them went long.
Yeah, it's always fun when you have a show with like 4 or 5 people on, and somebody's outside, someone's at the bar, someone's at the fair. Like people are just all over the place.
Yeah, those are my favorite episodes. So the Friday ones when we got 4 or 5 people on, I really enjoy those.
Yeah, no, those are good. But yeah, no, what are you? I guess what are you kind of seeing? Obviously, it's it's kind of hard to believe. I got a call from a 630 number yesterday, which I didn't recognize. It was a carrier asking me if I had any freight in this lane, which is surprising because it's been a year. It's been almost a year since I've moved any freight, but so I don't really know exactly. I mean, obviously, I talked to you, a lot of other people in the industry. People have different opinions, but what are you kind of seeing? Is the market recovering at all, or?
It's tough to say. I used to follow all the charts and try to give projections and whatnot, but
I can see you being a data guy.
Yeah, I am, but I try not to. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really know, and I don't think that anybody really knows. I think that you can make educated guesses and pull from data to give logic and projections, right? But at the end of the day, it's just I take it as it comes, right? So, I mean, what we've been seeing is not too much change up or down. So in response to the market kind of slowing, like our whole game plan was to pick up volume. So we've transitioned a lot more on the building out the team system, right, and picking up some high volume shippers and really just busting out volume. So we've seen our load count go way up, whereas our margin percentage has decreased a bit. It's compressed. But, hopefully if and when it does pick up, it'll be good. So we've been fine. We've been adding customers. I mean, it's out there, right? It's always out there. Similar to the Cam Newton video that kind of went viral. He said trucking's recession proof. So not necessarily, right? Like there can be bad times, and it's a very cyclical industry in nature. It's it's one of the most brutal ones due to, how many small trucking companies are out there. But that said, there is always stuff moving, right? So there's always opportunity. And for a small player like us, we can expand, right? We don't have as much overhead as some of the larger players. In nature, we're a 3PL, so less overhead than, say, an asset-based company. But we can be flexible, kind of pivot and change what we're doing and how we're operating in response to the market. And also we can be, proactive rather than reactive. So we see these trends and kind of plan accordingly and keep our people updated of what's going on and how to, operate. So it's been good for us. I mean, we're out of space. Like I said, we've got construction going on the new office downtown. We're going from 5,500 square feet to 15.5. We've had to start hiring offshore because we don't have anywhere to place people in person. So it's been fine for us, but we can definitely, feel we have guests on to talk about how bad it is. So again, it's just a little bit different with us being a smaller 3PL in the space.
Are you still pretty connected with like most of the customers within your company now that you have 40 reps? I mean, if you're talking to someone at the vending machine at your company, like Chad over at it started 6 months ago, are you like familiar with his customers, or is it kind of getting so big where it's kind of difficult to do that?
It just depends. No, I mean, like I don't know all of our customers, right? I mean, I see what's being processed and like what's moving, but I don't know the details of all the customers. If one of my reps who's been here 4 months came in and tried to talk to me in detail about one of his loads, I wouldn't know what he's talking about. But that said, like I do keep my finger on the pulse of the company and can kind of see what's coming through and who's moving what. But no, I'm mostly, if I'm hands-on at all, or I don't want to say hands-on, but like if I'm involved in the operations, it's usually with the team side of our company with the more enterprise-esque shippers, the higher volume stuff. But for the Cradle to Graves mostly target small to medium-sized companies, and those are more relationship-based driven businesses. Whereas, not to say the enterprise isn't, but it's a little bit more technical and operational focused. So I'm a little bit more hands-on there. And then actually my partner Logan, he's a little bit more hands-on with the Cradle to Graves. So no, to be short, no, I don't know all the customers that we work with or know the details of them.
What about you and I have a mutual friend who loves this topic, and he's excelled at this. But I mean, do you encourage your reps to like go, visit customers in person? Like if they have a customer 150 miles away or a different state. I mean, are you kind of encouraging that? I mean, speaking of kind of relationships.
Yeah. It just depends, right? I mean, we can't go see all of our customers, right? But if and when it makes sense to, yes, especially if they're not too far away. But like if a Cradle to Grave moves 2 loads for some guy in Washington, we're not going to pay to send him on a plane to Washington and pay for 3 days of hotel and pay for dinner.
Let's put a different example. Let's say you have a Cradle to Grave rep that's doing 20,000 in GP a month with a customer for the last 6 months, and they're out in Arizona. I mean, are you book? Can the rep like book a flight and fly out
Yes.
there if he comes into your office?
Yes. I mean, so the ROI has to be there. And then also like our BDRs that they'll travel and go see prospects and go to conferences and stuff. But no, like we can't go see every single customer. And yeah, at the end of the day, like there is a bottom line, right? So it has to make sense for us to send somebody to go see a customer or prospect. Like we can't go see them all, right? So, but yes, we do try to if and when we can. I travel a lot to go see customers. And yeah, anybody we've been working with for a while, we do make an effort to go see them and build that relationship. We're huge on customer retention. A lot of people talk about sales, getting in the door. Yes, obviously it's a brokerage, so there's sales, but we really put a big emphasis on customer service and retaining those customers. When we land an account, we want to keep the account.
I think I'm glad you brought that up. So, I mean, and maybe I view this wrong. A lot of people would probably disagree with me as a Cradle to Grave rep, but I got into sales at 19, 18, 19. So, about 10 years. Logistics, I would say, is the least sales skill necessary out of any job I've been at. I mean, all of my big customers were onboarded in the first 3 to 5 months, but they weren't big customers right away. But, 6, 7 months later, those were the ones that were, doing a lot of revenue, and more so the profit went up. So, I mean, I think a lot of that is just building the relationships, improving the service level. You can't just get in with an account and expect that you're going to be, right off the bat, making good money and, getting all the dedicated lanes and all of that. And I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but some people think I'm nuts, but
no, I think there's so many variables, right? So it's tough to put a blanket statement on it. That said, I do have direct experience with working accounts that are known names, and I'll know other people that are set up with the accounts on maybe the same TMS, and it'll get brought up, and they're like, yeah, man, they're just an awful customer. They're so cheap. But man, we've like worked it to the place where we're doing 100, 150 loads, and it's a top 5 account within the company. So yes, I think once you prove service, especially with some of the larger companies, it opens up doors to other lanes and all that good stuff.
And people within the company too. I mean, I found sometimes you'll think the logistics manager is the only one that has any say in freight, but then you find out the CFO or this sales guy is actually nobody knows to call him or contact him. But if you're doing a good job, they refer you to someone else in the company that's taking care of different freight.
Yeah. So one of these accounts that I'm kind of alluding to in 2024, we've had five different mills, new locations call us to get set up because they can see our scorecard with the other mills, right? So it increased our visibility, loads, all that good stuff. So yeah, after a while, man, I really believe that if you're doing a good enough job and taking care of people, you'll start to get referrals. You'll get that inbound lead, which is something that you can't expect to have when you're getting started out as a Cradle to Grave. But over time, hopefully, you're getting inbound customers. So I haven't made a cold call in 2.5, 3 years, but I set up probably 2 to 4 customers a month on the low end, four a month, like 1 a week.
That's pretty impressive. And those are all coming from referrals from customers, pretty much.
Customers, LinkedIn. When I started posting on LinkedIn, I didn't really have any intention of doing it to sell. I wasn't trying to social sell, but I do get messages from people, and I've had the opportunity to move shipments with people that have messaged me on LinkedIn or that I've interacted with.
Not double brokers, right?
No, not double brokers, but man, like some actual trucking companies. If it's out of their wheel, like there are some like build to situations, but yeah, no. But actually, Matt, yes, a brokerage. I move LTL loads for a few brokerages. I know that we have differing opinions on this, but I have.
Oh, we're gonna go down the co-brokering.
I have a handful of 3PL customers that I move LTL freight through our portal. I don't have anything to do with it. We have a little LTL department. But yeah, so we got some co-brokering deals worked out with other 3PLs.
Does the customer know about it?
Yeah, they have to use our BOLs. But I don't know, man. It's not. I don't talk to their customer. I just talk to them, right? So I can't really say.
They just how does that even work? They just I've I've been approached with a lot of different things in my DMs, but that's not been one when I was a broker. So they just come to you and be like, "Hey, our LTL rates are terrible. Can we co-broker with you?" Like that's just how these conversations are going.
No, so with the LTL stuff, that's a lot more common than you would think. So when you get into like co-brokering, yeah, there are differing opinions, but a lot of brokerages use 3PLs to broker. So like, I'm not going to name drop, but there's a bunch of portals that are technically 3PLs that many brokerages source through. For the most part,
Oh, we do that too. I mean, okay.
that would
Are you
be
talking
hand
about?
technically it's a broker. They don't own the LTL trucks; they're brokering the load. So it's co-brokering.
Oh, I guess that's
We just have
a fair point. My brain's kind of mushy, but yeah, that's a fair fair point. And we've talked about this too. I mean, I know very little about LTL. I moved one LTL shipment for a friend once. It was an absolute disaster,
yeah.
and I think you and I agree on this. But I'm very limited knowledge on LTL.
Well, we don't. So that's one thing, man. So from my experience as being a credit to great broker, and then running black box, right? Like there's all these things that can make the job more stressful, right? So our credit to great brokers, they don't do LTL. If they get LTL, they kick it to. We got two guys that run the LTL. They kick it to them, and they're servicing the LTLs. That's another thing we talked about. How do you stand out? You start mixing in all this stuff. If you're a full truckload broker, yeah, maybe over time you can learn it, but trying to LTL is a whole different world. It's so much different. If you're selling full truckload services and then you're pivoting to LTL, it's completely different. There's less visibility. There's more touches. The chances of getting reclassed, up charges. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to class a shipment, it's going to make you look very bad. So what we do here is we don't try to mix it. I'm not training my credit grade brokers on LTL. So anything LTL, they'll loop in my LTL department and they'll take over. And they're still paid commission on any shipments that are ran through. But yeah, you said you moved one LTL. I'm sure that it was extremely stressful, right?
Yeah, and I didn't want to do it. It was for a friend here in Minnesota who I couldn't really say no to, and then couldn't find his stuff, and having to call the LTL carrier, and it was in like some place in the warehouse, and the portal was saying it delivered, and
Yeah,
was not worth the stress to me. But some people love it, so
yeah.
to each their own.
It just depends. A big thing with LTL is going to be the customer. So the customer is going to affect your LTL experience. So the LTL shippers know how LTL is. The full truckload shippers that just you pitch them LTL and they don't know about it and they're expecting full truckload service, they can cause it to be very stressful, right? Because if you're not very upfront about and establish, expectations on LTL, like what it means, how it's moving, the possibilities. So if they're expecting full truckload service and you're selling them LTL service, they're going to be upset. So the people that actually ship LTL and know how it works and how it goes, like it can be a good deal, right? But the full truckload customers that are trying to do a one-off LTL, it's usually stressful because they just don't understand. And a
Well,
lot
with
of
me when I tried to do an LTL, I didn't understand at all what I was doing.
yeah, well, even our reps, they kick to the LTL department. So every time they do, I try to give like a little disclaimer. Hey, if we're gonna do this, like you need to be upfront. If they don't ship LTL, this is what it means. This is why it's cheaper, right?
Well, you can lose a customer too. That's another problem. Like I'm not even sure I'd want to kick it to an LTL, depending on the quality of LTL rep or the quality of the customer. Because you kick it to them, then you ruin your great truckload business because one LTL carrier screwed you over.
So yes and no, but I think that goes back to addressing the expectation. So if the rep doesn't need to understand all the ins and outs of the LTLs, but if it's a full truckload customer that's requesting an LTL service, and the LTL rep comes over and talks to them, just like, hey, like just say, like you need to be upfront, like this is what this means, this is how it's going to move, this is why it's cheaper, these are the risks. So I actually made a LinkedIn post. It was LTL equals less than likely. And I'm not opposed to LTL, right? Like we do LTL, we do. I mean, I don't know, like 100, 150 LTL loads a month. I'm not against it, but there's a few people that comment, there's like bad take, this, that. It's like, well, like I understand if you're LTL focused company, right? But like at the end of the day, like LTL it's more risky in nature. That's why it's cheaper, right? Like we wouldn't move LTL if it was the same price. Like there's a trade-off. It is cheaper because it's going to take longer, is going to be transferred between trucks. There's less visibility, less tracking. The appointment, like is it's unreliable. It is. If it's an important shipment, you wouldn't LTL a trade show shipment, right? So I don't LTL for what it is. It's fine if it's gone about the right way. But yeah, like when they're expecting full truckload service on an LTL truck, you're setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's I would probably agree with that. LTL is, I mean, that was kind of the thing that surprised me. I'm not sure which one would be more stressful for me as a broker, international or LTL. I think it'd be pretty close. But full truckload, I mean, you have kind of an advantage. I think the able to learn. I'm not talking before someone misinterprets me. I'm not talking about becoming an expert or you're never going to do that in my opinion, but to have like the basic knowledge to like move freight, on the truckload side is so much easier, I think, than, international drayage, LTL, some of the other stuff.
So yeah, so that's see, and I know that we disagree on this whole what I'm about to get into. We've talked about before, but that's the whole benefit in like having partners that do specialize in something like that. So like if I don't, and I understand you're most likely going to say, well, you should just pass the contact. But if I don't have experience in international, but I have a company that's set up with me that is, and if I get an international shipment, I'm just sending it to them to quote, and then I might mark it up my percentage and then run it through them. So yeah, we don't do a whole bunch of international. We actually do our international through I source my LTLs through 3 different companies and go with whichever one's cheaper, right? But 2 of those have forward capabilities. So if and when it's an international shipment, I'm running it through them rather than setting it up.
There's some complications with that, though, being able to mark up margin if you're not an actual freight forwarder, from my understanding. You don't have your own NVO.
I'm not entirely sure. I know that we haven't had any issues with it and have been doing it, but I'm not a transportation lawyer. I don't know enough about it to really speak on it.
I don't either. That's just what I've heard from 1 or 2 people, but it's just
complicated. I don't know. We could be doing something wrong, but it's what we do. We haven't had any issues with it thus far. And
don't say it on a podcast. Then.
well, I'll say that we did. We run international loads through a forwarder. I don't think it'd be any different than. I mean, some shippers and receivers will mark up their freight, right? So it would essentially be like the same thing as. I mean, a lot of people do that, right? If I'm selling a product and I quote out the transportation to you, Matt, a broker, and you come back at 2,000, I might tell whoever I'm sending it to that it costs $2,500 to make an additional $500, and that's pretty practice.
No, I agree. There's just a lot of international. Well, I mean, a lot of things on that side of it that didn't make sense to me. Well,
yeah, I don't know much about it, so I can't really speak on it. That's why I enjoyed having Mark on the show so much. You guys are talking about ocean stuff. I didn't really have much value to add, but I was just sitting there taking mental notes, and it was a lot. Same thing with Matthew Chapa. He was talking about some international stuff that was over my head.
A lot of that stuff is. I thought the technology is like behind the times and logistics altogether, but the ocean world is super like. It's just like hurry up and wait type of thing. So we were talking about with like spot quotes, if the customer sends you a spot quote right now, you can probably have them rate back in 10 minutes. If you have direct contracted freight with an ocean carrier and you need a spot rate, it could take a day or 2. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, that's crazy. Which I guess it makes sense when we need international quotes. It does take a little while. I guess I've never really noticed it. And again, we don't do a whole bunch of it. But yeah, we don't really do very few and far between, like maybe like 1 or 2 a month, really international aside from Canada. We don't do any Mexico.
We were touching on, not to go off topic, but I forgot to say, we were touching on Cam Newton earlier. I mean, you have an ex-NFL player working for you. If there's anyone that could get Cam Newton on a podcast, maybe they know each other,
Yeah, well, he's kind of a freelance, so he's 1099. So he doesn't. I mean, he does some sales on the side from time to time. So I'll be up at the conference with him for anybody watching. It's Hockland Dix. He does a little bit of sales for us. He owns some trucks. He's involved in the industry, but he still coaches and teaches at Alabama. Does some player mentorship. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask him about Cam. Probably not, though. I don't. Auburn, Alabama. I don't know if they.
Oh yeah, he did go to. If he played for Alabama,
yeah,
we might have actually had a good shot. I think of getting him on, but not
Yeah,
probably not that he plays with Auburn.
we could potentially have Haha on at some point. He's got a cool story when he retired from the NFL. He bought a couple of trucks, even got a CDL, and made a few runs to fully understand. He's a very impressive individual beyond his athletic accomplishments, which All American Alabama, first round pick, Pro Bowler, wildly successful, and he's a really intelligent guy. He'd be a good guest at some point. I'll talk to him.
Yeah, we should do that. Should definitely do that.
Man, I think that streaming from the Two Dogs page, we just don't get as many. We don't have any comments.
No, I was going to tell you that, and we're still like, we're still learning what we're doing, but it's like, yeah, I think we should, I don't know, probably better off going for our personal pages.
Yeah, I guess so. We'll do that moving forward, but we'll still stream to the company YouTube and X, but the LinkedIn, I think that we should do our personals.
It should still show up under the event though when you do your personal, like the people who are signed up for the event, it should still show under that, right?
I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to. I mean, I could remove
the event page. Like if you streamed to your personal LinkedIn, will that show up? Like the comments are generally underneath the event page.
Yeah, most likely. But again, so I created the event page through Two Dogs this time as opposed to my personal. So I don't know how that would work. But yeah, most likely that's probably that's a potential solution. I think that would work. I could remove the Two Dogs and go to my personal at this point, but we're about to the hour, so just hold on.
I was wondering. I was like, it's a combination of us being extremely boring, or the fact that we changed where we're streaming to.
I think it's because we changed. That's where I'm gonna tell myself to feel better about the turnout.
We went from like 2 shows with 50, 100 comments and a lot of people into it. If anyone's watching, drop a comment.
We'll regroup for next episode and do it from the personals. Yeah, the only comment I got is from you in the private chat.
It was fun though, regardless, just to talk shop and I think a lot of our viewerships come in YouTube and Spotify anyway. So
yeah, no, I think it'll be a great episode for people to listen back to. I think that there's some good stuff in there. We talked about some pretty relevant topics to pretty much anybody getting started or anybody that has gotten started, right? So yeah, no, I think it was good for what it was, especially last minute, us getting on here kind of impromptu without a real agenda.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Are we on Apple yet, by the way? Okay, we're going to be on Apple soon, guys, with Spotify and YouTube right now. Say that again?
I said at some point we'll be on Apple.
At some point.
I'll create it. If we we'll be up on Apple soon.
Well, should we wrap it up, man? You got a fun trip to the home delivery show, and we'll be back next week. I think we already have 2 shows lined up for next week, from my understanding.
Yes. Be on the lookout for our pages for some announcements. We'll get those lined up, scheduled, and make some post about it. And we'll be looking forward to it. Once again, shout out to Sales-CRM, Josh Lyles. If you're in the market for a CRM, shoot him a message. Tell him that the dog sent you.
And thanks again to Trio Black Box HD. Have a good rest of the day, Will, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Likewise. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Bye.